Hello wonderful humans, and welcome back to another one of my videos where I sit down and read. Well, actually no, I'm watching at the moment. I'm watching the Wheel of Time TV series and I am writing notes straight after I watch the episode. Today I have 4 pages of notes in my trusty notebook that I just sat down immediately after finished. Not quite immediately, I think I got up and did some other things, but I sat down, wrote my notes, and so they're my initial reactions. It's before I sit down and analyze anything. It's before I go back and rewatch anything. It is literally just my initial reactions. Now, I'm coming at this TV series as someone who has only read the first 3 Wheel of Time books. Go check out my other videos if you haven't, because I'm doing the same thing with the books, where I read a chapter, write a page of notes, and then share them with you. So that's kind of my whole thing that I do. I like sharing my thoughts. I ramble a little bit. Last video, I know I was a little less structured in a way, because it's just really my free flow of thoughts in the notes. But then I noticed in the last video that I did go off on a few tangents that weren't in my notes and ended up repeating myself. So I do apologize. I noticed more as I watched it back to do any of the editing that I was doing. But today I'm going to be talking about episode 3 of season 1, called A Place of Safety. So just fair warning, this is full of spoilers, but only spoilers that I know of for the first 3 books and 6 chapters of book 4. Haven't read any more. That's next week's task. So I will be talking about the series from my point of view as someone who has read the 3 books. So if you haven't read the books, if you're watching the series for the first time, don't watch this video. Come back and watch it after you've worked things out, because I do make I do talk about things just as if based on what I know and make connections to what's going on in the book. On the other side of things, if you have read all of the books and I say something because it's my belief, having read the first 3 books, please don't correct me, because I'm really enjoying not knowing what's going on. I actively avoid spoilers and social media as much as I can. I do have little spoilers that have come my way, and that's fine. But I am really trying to have this authentic, real experience of reading the books and also then watching the series. Once I've finished watching the series, I'm looking forward to going back and watching what other people have said, and other YouTubers and bloggers and all that kind of thing. So that's my plan for after I finish. But right now, it's just my thoughts based on my experience. So I'm going to get stuck into it. Sorry about the long introduction today, but I just wanted to get that out there. A Place of Safety. So I enjoyed this episode a lot more than the last one. The last one was good. But this one I felt was an improvement, and it sort of really started to feel more like the books in a way, not necessarily following the storylines or the plot points or all those kind of things, but the feel of the books following a few storylines at the same time where they're splitting off, and so we start seeing more things going on. Plus the introduction of Tom happened in this episode, the Tinkers, and very, very briefly we see Loghain as well. And I think they were all things that I really enjoyed about this episode. But yeah, that's sort of what I noticed first, and I'm going off the book here already. 1 paragraph in, not even. Anyway, I really appreciate that the different mediums mean different things, but what mean that we're going to see different things. But this felt like it really embraced that multiple storyline thing, and it's going to be a taste of what we're going to get a lot more of in the future, and I like that, I assume anyway. And it was just really, really nice to see them capture the feeling of that, even if they went in different directions with what was actually going on. It had the feeling of the book, and that's what I look for in an adaptation. I want the feeling and the overall thing to be the same. I don't care if plot points change or characters. Well, I do care sometimes, but if as long as the overall arc is there, the characters aren't like changed at their core, all those kind of things. I think changes are good, but this captured the feel that I was looking for from the books. And it was there in previous episodes, but I think this one really cemented it for me. I'd be interested, do you see that as well? Do you feel that same thing about the multiple storylines and how that's making you feel about it? I'd be curious. Anyway, back to my notes. Nynaeve's prickly nature is on full show in her interactions with Lan, and oh, I love this. But so is her bad arsery when she kills the Trolloc in the pool. I thought that was just fantastic. This is no damsel in distress. She was struggling, she was scared, but she can look after herself. Because you can't look after other people like the villagers if you can't first look after yourself. And so we're seeing this strength about her, maybe more strength than any of the other villagers, I'd say, at this stage. Thought this was a great way to get the episode started. Lan and Moraine are definitely not going to be able to bully her at all, which is fantastic. Not saying that they necessarily bullied her in the books either. I'm just saying that this characterization of her, what we're seeing here, she is able to stand up for herself, and she's going to need that. I enjoyed Lan saying, "We both know you won't do that," or something similar along those lines, right before Nynaeve hacks at him with her knife or sword or whatever it is, a Trolloc blade, I think, because she's resourceful and she would have known that she needed a weapon of some kind. But she caught him by surprise, although not physically, but he wasn't expecting that. He had put her in a box, and she said, "Nah, I'm not doing that. I'm going to actually do something that you're not expected. I don't like you. I'm going to attack you." And I think that was a really, really cool thing. He'd misjudged what she'll do for her villagers and how strongly she feels for them. And also, I'd say there was a bit of misjudging her because she was a woman, and the women that he has worked with have been Aes Sedai, and so have been quite strong and willful and intimidating in a way. Nynaeve comes across as young and she's a villager, so there's those assumptions there that she won't be capable of this ruthlessness. Even though he's surrounded by women who are like that, he puts her in a different category. Anyway, he misjudged her, and she proved him wrong because of her villagers. And then having to tie her up until she calms down is also really beautiful, I think, given what we know about her temper and her passion and all that. I just think that was a really great way to show that in a visual way without having to go into it in a lengthy period of like a long scene or anything like that. We get this really quick glimpse. We see she can really get angry, and then it takes her a while to calm down. So I like that. I think that's a great way to demonstrate Nynaeve's prickly temper. It was also nice to hear her admit that the poison was beyond her knowledge. I thought that was a nice little bit of humility there as well, and how much she didn't want to admit that either. Really nice. Oh, I've enjoyed the short interactions so far between Nynaeve and Lan. I just think there's a nice little starting point there for them. And with Moraine sidelined, the focus is able to shift to Lan as an independent character, which I think was a really good. We've seen Lan and Moraine working together. We've seen little snippets. We've started to develop Moraine as a character, but now we're getting to see Lan come into his own when he's with Nynaeve, and I think that, again, really important. And so we start to see Lan as an independent character, not just as a servant or bodyguard, which might be people's first assumption about what a warder is, but as a partner who actually cares and worries about her. And I also like that they're keeping it so unclear about their relationship beyond this warder Aes Sedai relationship. They're keeping it really unclear, so as to sort of add that tension, I suppose, going forward in other episodes. A lot of this is new content for the characters. We don't see this, but it's implied that, I mean, they went on this journey together, so it's not like it's stuff that wouldn't have happened. It's just not in the book, because we see them right after Shadol Lagoth in the book, and then I don't think we see them again until they catch up. Oh, we see them a few times as they're trying to find Perrin and Nynaeve, but we don't see the daily stuff. We just see them making decisions in the book. I like seeing the interactions between these two a lot more. The focus was a lot more in the book on Moraine, which again made a lot of sense. Anyway. No, I will say this. I suppose, and it hasn't necessarily happened in the TV series yet, so I don't want to say too much. But what they're doing with Nynaeve and Lan, building up this little interaction and the chemistry, I think it makes more sense, because when the reveal happens in the book, it came as a surprise to me. There had been none of that scene. It was just all of a sudden they're declaring things to each other. Like, I know I said spoilers, but I'm still not wanting to necessarily go too much into it. Anyway, I just think what they're doing with these two characters, and in other episodes as well, as I'll talk about in the other ones, I really like that they're building it up, and there's a few things that happen that I think were really necessary to build that relationship up. So yeah, a lot of this is new content for these characters, and I like that it gives us a chance to get to know all three of them. Even Moraine, even though she's unwell, we've seen her powerful and competent. Now we see her as weak and reliant on other people. Aes Sedai are not all powerful, and this sets this up really well, and something again that I think was a really deliberate choice to show that they can be injured, and they're not indestructible. And I know we already saw that with the Aes Sedai burning at the stake in the last episode, and I think this carries that through. And actually that's something that we do see again going forward, is that Aes Sedai are not indestructible. They're not all powerful. They do have weaknesses. And it's doing a really nice job of setting that up. Liandrin is so well cast. The actress reminds me, and I'm really sorry I'm not talking about the actors' names. I'm going to make a concerted effort with future ones to look them up as I go. I forgot, so I'm sorry. But the actress reminds me of Idina Menzel, who voiced Elsa in Frozen, and also played Elphaba in Wicked the musical, originated Elphaba in the musical Wicked. But she's got this look about her that reminds me of Idina Menzel and of Elsa, the coldness, not the friendly Elsa that we get to know in Frozen, but that coldness, and it's the kind of person that Elsa could have become. And so in my mind, I'm really quite liking this actress as a choice for Liandrin. Really, really cool. She's automatically someone I don't like right away. From her brief intro in episode 1, you see that she's harsh and quite different to Moraine, which again is a really nice complementary sort of situation there. And yeah, look, I'll have a lot more to say about Liandrin in future episodes, but I'm looking forward to this part of the story around Loghain playing out, as it's mostly new. This is not stuff that we saw in the book or read about. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this and seeing what happens here. It should be interesting to see more Aes Sedai earlier than in the books and in action, from what I can tell. It's another change that makes sense for new viewers, new people to this world. It's something that should help draw people in, new people into the story, and catch them up a lot quicker. You don't want to be introducing the Aes Sedai as a whole in what, book 2 I think is when we start seeing a few of them, but book 3 is when we really start to see them a lot more. You don't want to wait that long. You need to introduce them a lot earlier for visual and that sort of understanding. But again, that links in with the opening credits. It's making the Aes Sedai a bigger part of the story, which, not having read the whole thing, I actually quite like, because it's shifting the focus away from some things, and it's I think it's setting the Aes Sedai up to be the ones who are going to save the world. And I love that, in my understanding and in my guesses, it's going to not be the Aes Sedai, it's going to be these villagers who they look down on a little bit, who do more for the world than the Aes Sedai, all 5 of them in their own ways. That's my assumption of where this is going. And I really like that the TV series is setting that up as an even bigger thing. Before we see any of the problems, the political stuff, we've seen snippets of it, hints of it, but we haven't yet met the Amelin seat or seen that sort of big political Tarvalon world yet, and the games and all of those kind of things. We haven't seen that yet, but we're seeing hints of it all along, which is really a nice way to introduce it, so it doesn't come as this big shock when it starts happening. Perrin and Egwene's story is possibly the one with the least to comment on. Alias is definitely missing, which could mean Perrin takes longer to know what's actually happening to him. He could still show up soon though. The Tinkers might direct them to him, or he might show up at the Tinkers fire or something like that. And just commenting on a comment from the last video, I get budget cuts mean we're not going to see all the characters. Alias has always been a favourite of mine though. I don't know why. One of the favourite cameo characters. And another one is Captain Domain. Yeah. They're 2 of my favourite side characters, and I don't think we're getting either of them, and it doesn't bother me as much. It's just something I'm commenting on. Budget cuts, or not budget cuts, but budget reasons. I know we're not going to get all the characters, and that makes perfect sense. But I do wonder what it will mean for Perrin's storyline, because by this stage, by the time he meets up with the Tinkers, he at least has a vague idea that he's got some connection. He might be denying it, he might not be wanting it, but he at least knows that it's happening, and that he's not the only one that it's happening to, because Alias has this ability as well. So I'm interested to see how that changes his storyline down the track, especially with events that happen in The Dragon Reborn. I'm just looking at the bigger impact. I wonder if we'll see Alias at a different point in the story. I know we're not seeing some of the other characters who may have been introduced in Camelin. We're not going to see them until season 2 because they're not going to Camelin. So maybe we'll get to see him later. Egwene relegated to a support person in this episode, specifically for this sort of Tinker Perrin dealing with things. The fact that he couldn't protect Layla. It was nice to see that sort of she was set up in the first 2 episodes as being potentially the most important of the lot of them. Moraine focused completely on her. The others were there, but she was focused on her. But now she's relegated, she's taking a step back, and the episode's taking a step back from her to highlight Perrin and his inner struggles. And I actually like that we didn't get this in the last episode. We didn't get a lot of him talking about it. We see him dealing with it, but I like that it's taking him time to process and for it to really simmer and really build up his anger, upset, resentment, all those kind of things towards himself, and blame, and all that. I really like that. So it was a nice moment when she tells him it wasn't his fault, even though he obviously doesn't agree, as no one else knows that it was his axe that and him that actually killed her. I imagine this whole thing can never fully leave him. Even if he manages to move on a little, this is going to really weigh on him. And again, if you have not read, there will be spoilers. Having met Fail and in The Dragon Reborn, and having suspicions based on the first 6 chapters that Fail is going to be a really big part of Perrin's life, I wonder what that will do to their relationship as well. That could be very interesting to see how they, I can see it'll be quite easy to recalibrate his character and their relationship to fit this in. But I'd say that will become a more healing thing for him to meet Fail down the track. So anyway, jumping ahead too much. I imagine, this will never leave him though. It will always be there. He will always, even if he manages to move past it, he'll never fully stop blaming himself, or he wouldn't be true to Perrin. Like, Perrin would hold on to that forever, I can imagine. I forgot about the fire moment. Gwen purposely accessing the source to help Perrin, who must be thinking he can't do that right. He can't even do that right. A bit of tense humour from him with the comment about who ended up lighting the fire. I wonder whether they went away, the camera moved away from that to sort of imply that maybe Perrin lit the fire with his own. Because they just haven't really leaned into Perrin being a potential Dragon Reborn in my mind, other than the wolf stuff. They haven't really put that across, I suppose, although, yeah, I'll get to that, the episode down the track. Maybe they do lean into it a bit, but not yet. They haven't, but maybe this was their attempt at sort of suggesting that maybe he lit the fire, not with his thing, what's that called, flint, but maybe, but I got the impression that it was a Gwen who did it, but I don't know. That was a nice touch, as it's so human to make light of things that scare us or are outside of our comfort zone. So yeah, Perrin making a little bit of a joke in that situation when he's clearly upset. He's not feeling like he can protect a Gwen or provide for the women in his life. Yeah, I think that was a really nice touch, which any use of magic plus the wolf stuff and being lost and all of that, it's all very much outside of Perrin's comfort zone. So it was nice for him to turn to humour, because it's very real. You can see it's all getting too much for him, as they are surrounded by tinkers. Like, this is too much. He's so too much for poor Perrin. While readers of the book know that they're safe, he doesn't, and probably new viewers didn't to start with. The dogs would have been scary, I suppose, and for him, not for the dogs wouldn't have been scary for the people watching at home, but there might have been that fear that they were going to be attacked or captured or something by the tinkers. So, and this would have been another instance of Perrin must be thinking that he was about to fail to protect a Gwen as well. And it's a very different introduction to the tinkers than we get in the book. In the book, Alias takes them there, so they know that they're relatively safe, and they know that they're going to the tinkers. They work that out very quickly. In this case, it's quite different, especially given that they're surrounded and all that. I thought that was really quite interesting that how the tinkers met them. It felt a little bit confrontational, which isn't what I would have thought, but I also, yeah, it's an interesting way to introduce them, really, but a nice way of setting them up to be something that they're not, so that it's a bigger bigger reveal when they start talking about the way of the leaf. And Gwen here steps up and leads in an uncomfortable and scary situation. Something I suspect but haven't read yet she'll have to do on a much larger scale in the future. I mean, it's one of the spoiler areas that I have. It was hard to avoid finding out a little bit about Gwen's future. But she's going to need to step up and lead on a much larger scale, and it also helps sort of set her up a little bit more as a Dragon Reborn candidate for the series. Her leading the conversation instead of Perrin. But the Tinkers are lovely and friendly, and we leave them in a safer situation than any of the other villagers right now. I actually really liked the Tinkers, other than sort of questioning the introduction to them. I think that they look about right. They're good all round. I'll talk more about them in the next episode, but I liked the Tinkers, especially so far, what we've seen of them. And Perrin's nightmare was definitely more full on than the last nightmare that we saw from Rand. I do understand the cinematic decisions about the nightmare, but it's definitely not what I was expecting from the dream world. So I think this is probably one of those areas. I'm not worried by it. It's just not what I pictured. And it's probably the only time I'm sitting there going, that's not how I pictured that. But it's more of that cinematic decision that for viewing. And I suppose it could have been a straight nightmare and not one of these dream world things, but I don't think it is. I'm really still waiting to see what happens in these nightmares, because by now Baalzamon was talking to them and trying to convince them to come on over to the Dark One's, Baalzamon's side, and this the figure that they're seeing is scaring them, so not trying to do that. So I'm interested to see what other changes they've made to the dream world, and how that will impact things. I'm interested to see that. Matt has definitely changed. We're starting to see this change come over him. He's less likely to make a joke, and he's in an absolutely terrible mood. And I like he's focused on getting home to his sister. So I think that's actually a really good way of changing things, because it sounds like it's the old Matt speaking, but there's this selfishness to it as well. Which I think is he doesn't want to, because when he left, he was leaving because he wanted to protect them. Now he wants to go back to them because that's where he's comfortable and all that kind of stuff. So there's this, it sounds like, I thought it was really well done. It sounds like he's doing it because he wants to be home with his sisters, but there's this selfishness that's coming through with it. A real change from the last episode, where he told Rand they needed to stay on Moraine's path because she's got fireballs. But they're not with Moraine anymore. And the darkness has arrived, and he's thinking worst case scenario, right, as we can see, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. I'd really love to know how a non-reader viewed Matt's change in the episode, especially as it was gradual and not complete. Plus could all just be justified by the events that are going on, and in the next episode it makes more sense what they're going for as well. And I think that was a really it's well done, really well done. But the dagger scene in episode 2 was more obvious than in the books, so people might see what's going on much quicker maybe, and we do see a lot more of the dagger in relation. No, we probably see the same amount of the dagger as we saw in the book. But yeah, I just wonder, might be too clear to keep that ruse up. But I suppose they don't want them to keep the ruse up forever. I'd expect that we find out in episode 8, right? Like, that will be the big reveal of who the dragon is. I'll be interested to see what events happen in episode 8. I'm actually really quite intrigued by that because it seems to be following the Eye of the World a lot more closely than I expected it to, given they were talking about it covering book 1, book 2 and book 3, but I suppose it's just drawing on content from the 3 books. It's not covering the stories of all 3. So anyway, I really like that it's Tom and Matt who form the connection and not Rand and Tom like in the books. Right from their first interaction, it's mostly Matt who interacts with Tom. I think that was really, really well done. It sets up the Dragon Reborn. It sets up future, that partnership, that sort of mentorship that I see happening where I'm up to in the books. Also, Tom's song was fantastic. I really liked it. The guitar gave it a more timeless feel than a harp would have, and the song composition definitely could have been a modern song, and I really liked that. It really helped with the obvious Middle Ages misrepresentation, having something so modern. I think if it had gone for, I actually thought it was a really smart decision to write the song that way. I'm really loving the music. I have not had any music that I haven't liked yet, so I'm looking forward to hearing more. But yeah, really good song. I thought Tom's demeanor was appropriate, especially if he changes due to things that happen later. He has an air of laughter and not caring, and yet Matt learns pretty quickly he has honor and compassion, and I think that's really, really great. We see a lot of similarities between the two of them, and I think it's fairly obvious why they have so many connections. They're the same person. They're not the same person, but they've got a lot of that. They care about other people, and that they might not want to, and they're up for a laugh and all that. I'd like to see more of that from Matt. Not now, obviously, but I would have liked to see more of that constant desire to be up for a bit of a laugh and all that kind of stuff. So Tom has compassion both for Matt, probably due to overhearing about his sisters when Matt apologized to the Islemen, and also the dead Isle warrior, which I thought was really, really lovely to see this, to see someone teaching Matt about how to be compassionate to someone who you might not know the full story about, and pointing out things like that this man who people are terrified of, the Isle, but he was not a threat, and this is why. And I think that was a really great thing Matt will remember, I would say. I hope, anyway. He might not remember it, actually. Interesting. We also get our first 2 clear-ish, I wouldn't say clear-ish clues about Rand's identity. The Isle hair and complexion that Tom says is rare outside of the old wasteland, plus when he was able to break down the door. So this is the first time that Rand, I feel, has done anything other than the fact that in the last episode he had the dream, the first nightmare. He broke down the door, and I wonder if he'll experience any side effects. Same with the Gwen. I don't think a Gwen experienced any side effects. Like, how do you portray that, I suppose, on screen? It's probably not something they'll play into as much, because they'll play into it more as a taint based thing with the Dragon Reborn, as opposed to using the source for male or female. Yeah. So far we've seen Perrin's wolf stuff begin, plus Gwen and Rand both accessing the source, and Matt's had a vague mention of bad luck, or of good luck. So we're starting to really see what they're all capable of, but we're not really seeing much of Matt yet. So I'm expecting in the next episode that we'll see more of a focus on what Matt can do. And Dana said there's been 5 in her dreams. So Nynaeve, I'm guessing, is the 5th. So has she been classed as Tavern in this TV series as well, or just as a threat, not necessarily Tavern, but a threat, one of the 5? Or is the 5th person someone else that we haven't met yet, like Elaine, for example, who is the same age or roughly the same age as the others, so might make more sense. But I do think that it was Nynaeve that she was referring to as the 5. And I thought that was really interesting. A lot of things really interesting. And I think that's a really good place to sort of drop something like that. They didn't dwell on it too much, but it definitely made both Matt and Rand go, what, 5 people? There's only 4 of us. I thought that was really well done. Dana caught me completely off guard. As soon as I realised that was her name, I expected her to be more important to Tom's story, given the Great Hunt storyline, but I did not expect her to be a dark friend. I thought maybe for a minute that she'd join them on the journey, and I thought that would be weird. And briefly, I did think maybe she was Lanfear in disguise due to her comment about being similar to a Gwen and her braid, maybe reminding Rand too much of a Gwen. So I thought maybe she was Lanfear just for a moment. She was a great character, all in all, and her talk of the Dark One's desire to save everyone makes sense, and it helps make why someone would be a dark friend make sense, and that there's different reasonings behind it. We'll meet some that are just after the power, and we'll meet some that are in it because they feel it will be the best protection for their loved ones. And then you've got someone like Dana who's been convinced that it's the best thing for humanity, that the Dark One wants to protect people. I am glad it was Tom that killed her, but I thought that was an interesting, given it's Dana, I thought that was a really interesting decision. Again, really interesting. But I'm glad it was Tom and not one of the boys, because they're not ready for human killing yet. They're not there, and I don't think that they did. No, there was no human killing in book 1 as far as I can remember. Unless that one of those last chapters in the Eye of the World where Rand does that stuff and he goes to the valley, and it's not really Rand, but maybe he killed humans there, but I think it was just Trollocs. Anyway, there was none of that in the Eye of the World, and I actually quite like that they didn't have them killing Dana. Some cryptic stuff to think about from her though. Do all dark friends know the 5 names, or just their faces? Or is it just some of them who the Dark One has given this information to? And Rand told her the rest, told her the names. She recognized Rand and Matt, and then Rand told her a lot of the other information. And then who is the 5th person? It really does have to be Nynaeve, I think. And Rand just doesn't realise that she's still alive yet. So that's why he's so confused about 5 people. And the fact that Moraine didn't say that it was, but she didn't know that Nynaeve was alive either. So anyway. Matt and Rand's brief falling out was hard to watch, knowing they may never fully come back from that brief spat over the firewood and where they should go. But they're going to stick together, and hopefully they can get along. Yeah, it's one thing. I hope that they do recover, because I hope that they at least, it might be more heartbreaking if they become friendly again and then they have a falling out. Oh, I'll be interested. I'm really interested to see how their relationship develops. Not a romantic relationship, just their friendship, how that sort of goes through the journey of the yeah, I'll be interested. I don't know what else trying to say there. I'm just really looking forward to seeing Matt and Rand's relationship go through its journey, because it's one of the friendships or relationships that I actually really enjoy watching in or reading about in the books, and get so frustrated by. I think it's not just enjoying it. I enjoy how much I care about it and how much it frustrates me at times, especially Matt in the books. The Isle's presence in this town was an interesting choice because we didn't meet any Isle until book 2. I guess it was one way of introducing uncertainty about Rand prior to discovering he's the one. I believe that's connected to them not getting to Camlin, I think, as well, in the series until season 2. Although, because that's when we start seeing people assume that he's Isle because of his hair and colour and colouring, all that kind of stuff. So I assume that they've done this, and also because the Isle, from my book 4, started book 4, view, the Isle are going to play a big part going forward. So they've introduced them without introducing them, if you know what I mean. Because they've introduced the Aes Sedai earlier. They're introducing all the players and making them a part of season 1 so that they're not such a surprise down the track. Yeah, so Camlin is where Rand is mistaken for an Isleman for the first time, I think. So this was needed to happen in another way, and that's one of the reasons why having an Isle present in this episode makes sense. And again, in future episodes, it'll make more sense. It also helps us and Matt develop trust for Tom pretty quickly. The way he chooses to bury the dead man and explains to Matt why he wasn't a threat and that the Isle was nothing like the Trollocs. Again, I think this was a really nice way. We could have assumed that Tom was a dark friend based on what we were seeing, the way he took Matt's money, all those kind of things. He wasn't a good guy, but now we see a different side of him. And again, that comparison between Tom and Matt can be made, that Tom also, in the first episode, it's implied that he stole the bracelet from that woman, but he did it for a specific reason, to buy the lanterns for his sisters, so he's not all that bad. Tom steals Matt's money and then gives it back when he realizes that it's not about Matt having money, it's about Matt needing to get home to his sisters, or something along those lines. All around, though, I really enjoyed this episode and the direction it's going, except for one thing. I'm pretty certain that they did kill off Bella in the last episode at Shadow of Logoth, and if it wasn't Bella that they killed off, Bella's just gone because the horses are gone. So I'm not happy. I will never forgive them for that. I will forgive them if Bella rocks up in a future episode. That's the only reason I will forgive them. Anyway, it's a solid way to start the series. These were the first 3 episodes available on the first day. I thought it was a really great thing to have the 3 episodes. They were all needed to hook people. If they'd only released the first 2, I don't think that they would have hooked people in the same way. I think that it needed the 3. There were changes, yes. I don't think I see any that are going to be overly damaging. There's some that are going to change some things, but nothing overly damaging to the story. And in all honesty, I think most of the changes are making it a better TV series, except for the fact that they appear to have killed off Bella. Again, I will not forgive them if that's the case. Anyway, I'm not really hung up on it that much, but yes, I am. Anyway, that is it for today. What did you think? Were you as surprised by Dana as I was? Because that definitely caught me off guard. Are you annoyed about the fact that Bella might not be alive? Did you like the song that Tom sang? How are you feeling about the music? Just tell me anything. I'm really excited to hear again what you have to say. I will hopefully, I'm hoping, provided everything goes according to plan, episode 4 will be up tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it'll be the day after. So that's my plan, just so you know where I'm at. And I will catch you again all very soon. Bye.